Good morning. We have a very rainy morning here in the foothills. We haven't gotten all the rain that many of you have, in the northern part of the state and further up the coast in Washington. I know some of you are from those areas, and hopefully all is well with you and you're doing good today. So, and on the East Coast, I've been thinking of those of you who pop in, and I recognize names from week to week. And when you're not here, kind of miss you. And so hopefully all is well with all of you. And we just had a good rain shower during the night, and it's a little drizzly this morning here where I am. All right. Good morning, Sally and Sarah, Pat, Nancy. Yeah, back there from Virginia and those places where I know the rain and the snow and all that across our country. We've had quite a bit of stuff going on. But to be truthful about it, the rain has been good for us here. At least in our area, we've been waiting for it. So anyway, hopefully there's good things from all of it. Today we're going to look at, we've got all of our parts together for our quilt. And today is putting that center together. And I want to talk a little bit about, what's going on with her directions in the pattern, which are perfectly wonderful. And you can get success with that, and very much know why she did it that way. For me, though, as with all of us, sometimes, one way works for some and another way works for others. I started out and I tried doing that with no pressing on my diamonds, and I would get little wrinkles and things like that. And I do not use steam when I press, because what I've learned over the years, and for those who I have taught in my classes, is that oftentimes when we're working with that steam, and we are very, very careful with the pressing as opposed to ironing, that it stretches our material, because the water is going to expand those those threads and whatever, and it stretches and moves out of place. So I do not use steam, even at the end or anything. Possibly when I have the quilt completely, so that there is no movement anywhere. But I've never found that to be a necessity. So if you are doing it the way the pattern is, I'm going to go through those steps with you today. And, you wouldn't have ironed anything at this point in time, according to the instructions. And so I want to finish up from where we were last week with the tulips or flowers, or whatever these star blocks are called, and then we'll move into joining all those pieces and parts together. So let me drop you down to the table. All right, here we have the pattern, and we are at this point, actually, probably here, and we add the green stripes, those sashings around the edge of that block. What makes this quilt a little bit, I don't want to say scary or difficult, because it's really not, if you just work carefully and slowly with that. So they're talking about putting this in step 24, and taking this step 23 flower into the corners of the step 9 star, which is, that piece that's up here without, let me go back, it's this. So you're going to be putting those squares into each of those, if you're following, the steps exactly as she did. But before we can move on to that, something we didn't get to last week is what are we going to do with, the stems. And in her pattern, she suggests that you zigzag them. And so you would need to put a stabilizer on the back of your block for that if you were going to do the zigzag stems. I chose not to do that. I thought that I would like the look of the hand stitched embroidered stem stitch on here, and I do like it. I think it's adds a little bit another element, and it's kind of fun, and so I want to show you. So I took my friction pen and I drew a line, drew my lines so I knew where to go and I could keep on track with that. And so I'm using DMC floss. I could have used a little bit heavier one. I am doing 3 strands. The 6 was a little bulky and a little bit more difficult, and I didn't like it as well. So it's preference. You could couch on, your a yarn or something thicker if you wanted to. Zigzag over something, whatever, or just use the zigzag stitch. But I'm going to share with you what I did. I am going to get started here again. And so you keep your thread going down. And I would say to make a stem stitch, look the best you can. Keep your stitches pretty much, and let me get that knot out of the way. It's wanting to catch there. Keep your stitches pretty much. So you're just making, a stitch back towards, and it'll come up like that, and then keeping your thread to the bottom. Again, making that stitch, keeping it at the same length. I like to cut my embroidery floss about 18 inches. I think this one might have gotten a little bit longer. And use an embroidery needle. But keeping, when the stitches, if you have, what happens, or at least for me what happens, is that when I'm doing embroidery stem stitch, like I am right here, and one stitch is a little bit longer than the other one, it starts to get to look a little messy. And so that's, for me, it's important to try to keep, your stitches, and I'm hoping you can see this. I tried to do most of it, so it was just a little bit, and to give you a chance to see it take place. And you're coming back up, not right in the same place where you went down before, but right before it, kind of, a little over halfway. Well, that's what I do. I'm not an expert embroiderer by any means, and I enjoy it when I get the opportunity to do it. And the stem stitch is an easy one to do, and it goes quickly, which sometimes for me that's great. So I just found a green embroidery thread in my stash that was close to what I needed for this, and again using 3 strands. And hopefully trying to keep this so that you can see it on camera. It's in a sense a tiny bit awkward going backwards. And coming down to the bottom, I've got about 2 stitches left in here, and I'm finding that if I take it straight to that corner and come up, then, you know, and going back down so that it fills in that space in there, and then knotting it off, it all kind of comes together into that. I'll get that thread there. All right, let me get the knot tied. So again, you know, you can, it's your quilt, and you can put into it, you know, figure out those stems, but those stems need to be done before you can start sewing the pieces together. So the stems, I chose to use embroidery floss and do the stem stitch to get those lines in there. And you are certainly welcome to do as the pattern says and zigzag them on, which is wonderful. But I just happen to like this, so hopefully it comes out. And you know what, Tori Lynn, or Tori, embroidery is relaxing, and it's really kind of nice. All right. Yeah, I don't always think to add that, but as I was looking at the, you know, the zigzag, I wasn't overly excited about that, so I chose that. All right, so then you have all of these blocks together, and now, you know, with the pattern, you have not pressed anything. And if you are following her pattern exactly as it says, which will work perfectly fine, you've got your star here sewn together, no pressing at this point. And I would have said, if you are using, you know, the one method that I showed you, which I'm going to be using again today, is marking your 1/4 inch at your seam lines. Then you would do the marking of those, you know, 1/4 inch in at the seam line, so that they get lined up, and you know, they match. You know, for when we, you know, you're going to be sewing some of those in and down. All right, and then we're coming now to putting these in, and if you read the directions at the bottom, you're going when we put it in, and I'll say it again to you, the point needs to extend. She puts it here at 1/8 inch beyond, and that's correct. You need to go 1/8 of an inch beyond, because you're going to be matching points, these diagonal points. And here is you know, this is where that's going to be becoming important. And I'm pretty close, but even I got a little bit off on that, but I don't think it's going to hurt dramatically, because I'm putting it together, and I don't know if I can get it up on all the way on the screen. I am coming in, putting the 2 on either side of this base, and then putting one on the right, and I'm going to make 4 of those quadrants, and then I will sew those 4, you know, 2 on one side and then 2 on the other, and sew through the middle to get it all together. And that's basically what you would do. And I wish I could get it all, you know, this whole piece on camera, but basically we're going to sew, if I can get this up, we're going to sew our square in with these 2 sides, and then we'll sew down the middle, and then to end that, we'll sew here. And when she talks in there about that 1/8 of an inch, and right there is that 1/8 of an inch point that you're going to keep, that's going to go beyond, so that these will come out at that angle that it needs to, and these are close together. Okay? And if you have questions, please ask, because I know I'm probably not making a ton of sense at this point, but hopefully as we sew it together, we will. All right, then if you're following the pattern, Once you have all of those squares sewn into, you know, that space in the star, the center star, then it's time to press. I found that when I didn't press, I got ridges or a little bit of space in there, so that's why I press. And I really take my time and work at the pressing part of this and not ironing. You know, so that I'm not stretching this and getting it out of line. Is that perfect? You know, do I do it perfectly every time? No, and I have to make adjustments. But one of the things that through the years that I've learned with quilting, I can keep ripping things out over and over again, or learn to know why the mistake happened in the first place and be able to alter that and get it back to what I need to sometimes. And so that press, you know, that big word that she writes in red, press, is truly important. And she talks about using lots of steam and working from the back side. Again, for me, working from the back side doesn't help me, because I don't get that, you know, I get a little bit of a ridge or something along here, and that's why I say so many times just to run the iron along the seam and then let your iron sit there, and then you're going to get these nice flat, and you won't get you know, that opportunity to get a fold in there in that. Before we start sewing these together, let me check to see at this point if you have questions. When using 3 strands, do you ever have one of the 3 strands being looser than the others and slightly sticking up? Yes, I do. And I think that's the way they're wound. And Joyce, what you could probably do to stop that is put a little bit of beeswax on your, run it through a beeswax across, you know, wax, and that'll keep it together and you won't have that problem. All right, so, and hello to you guys, Nancy and Dot, and so it's rainy in Costa Rica too, so we're all enjoying some weather changes for sure across the country. So let me get rid of this pattern for a second, and let me get my first piece right here, and we're going to be sewing it onto the side, and I think I want to go to, if this was right here, I think I want to sew the right side first, and we're gonna sew, and I don't, just to let you know, this is the halfway mark on the side of the block, and this because there's 4 of these, this is the halfway mark here, and that helps keep that 1/4 inch up there. And so we're going to fold this over, and I'm going to take it back so that I can make sure that those seams match up, and I didn't mark my 1/4 inch here. So let's do that just so you can see it. And here's my ruler. So I'm going to go into that 1/4, you know, find my 1/4 inch and mark that right along there. All right. And find a pin. So again, I am going to go in to my seam line right above the marking, because that marking takes up space, and I want to make sure that I keep that 1/4 inch. And then I've gone into the other side, and I'm going to hold it you know, between my fingers so it stays straight and I don't move that, and then I will you know, turn it and get that held. And I'm going to sew from the top side. Let me get that under. Oh, let me change the, all right. And I will use my stiletto from time to time, so that's, and making sure that that is all laying where it needs to be. And again, no pressing, pulling, that kind of thing. And I can go right up to that seam line. And I don't very often advise you to do what I just did, and that is going over that pin. Now, I just noticed that I may have an issue here. We'll see. All right. Because this is off of the bottom a little bit, and I want to get that on that 1/4 inch seam line there, so we'll see how it works. I might have to take that out, which I don't really want to do. And so now I've got that side on. Let me do my 1/4 inch mark on this side. And now I've got my other, and you know what? I just sewed that on backwards. And I didn't even notice that I was doing it, because you want your green point to the outside, at least that's the way the pattern shows, and your red into the, well, maybe I did. Nope. I need to turn that around. You know what? I'm going to take it apart and do that afterwards. I just want to show you how to sew this in. But what I did is this green, this needed to be at the top up here, okay? Where it comes to the green in that, so that the green is up here with the flowers, and the center is down here, and you can see that those points are, you know, coming out, and this makes up the center of the block. So I messed that up. I wasn't paying attention. So since I'm going to take that off anyway, I'm just going to sew it wrong on both sides, because I would have to take that off anyhow, and make that happen. All right. It seems to happen a lot with me. I've told you before, I really can't chew gum and walk at this, you know, at the same time, and obviously I can't talk and sew very well at the same time, because it's these little things that make a huge difference that I keep messing up on. But I do want to show you how to bring all of these points together, so that they and Kathy, I didn't look up very quickly enough, and you are absolutely right. I did sew it on backwards. I need a noise thing on there so you guys can send an alarm. You're messing up. So it's because I didn't look up and to the chat box right away. And so yes, I did that. So now I've got extra work for myself. But I do want to, I'm just going to go ahead and sew it wrong, and I will take it out, obviously. But now, hopefully you guys will not do that when you are sewing yours. Does that sound like a good plan? And And whenever you're moving your fabric and getting it in place, always work gently with it. And I am sewing through this, and because what I do when I sew these is I sew through that and then come out. Alright, so I've got my 1/4 inch up here, and now what I am going to do is I'm going to turn these, and we're going to sew these in. This will turn back on itself like that. And I'm going to just stick a pin there just so to hold that in place. And then again, I'm going to put my pins in along here. Again, right above the, and I want it as right in that seam line, right where the line starts, but not over it. Okay. And holding it so it's straight down. I don't move it out of that. Our last one. That pin is not. All right, then we're going to be sewing, and you know, up here, sorry, I keep bringing it down so I can see a little bit better. That point, that comes together and makes, you know, that little triangle piece there, and it sews all the way down. So getting that under the machine, and let me move that to the machine. And now I start out on the end. I do not start at the 1/4 inch mark. And the reason I do that is simply because when that 1/4 inch seam comes together, I'll explain what I'm doing in a minute. And that point got off, and so that was one of the reasons why that was good to mark that. And I want, you're going to see it in just a minute. So I sewed up to the pin. And now my points are coming out just as they should at the end there, because that'll help when I sew the pieces together to get that flat center line there. All right, I sew through from the edge, and I have because right here is where you would put a dot at the 1/4 inch, okay? And when you stop, you need to take a back stitch and then come up and you cut your thread. When you're coming up here, you would do the same thing. You would get to that 1/4 inch mark, you would stop, you would need to take a back stitch, and pretty soon you've got this lump right there in the center. And what I found over and over again is that lump would cause me to have a wrinkle in that corner and all of that. And so I just started sewing through it, because now that's a lock stitch, and then I go with the back of my seam ripper, and I take those it's usually 2 stitches, sometimes a 3rd one will get in there, but I take the back because I don't want to cut those threads, because that's what's holding that in place right there. Okay, and so I have those stitches, but it's still crossed and they're still connected in that place, so that when I open this, and now that I can press, I'm going to press this seam open, and so I don't want to do any of that pressing right now because I'm going to take this out. But the seams would fold back, and you would have, and sometimes I'll need to, just loosen that up because they're tight. So that is now completely flat in that corner, and when I press that, I would press, it wants to go towards the outside, so I would press that flat from the back. I would press in, and these would go this way. All right, when I was pressing that, and I would press these this way, okay, and that would press completely flat. And then when I get to the bottom here, because those 2 lined up, I have those coming out as as they should on that. And then you would then sew your next piece. So you've got it like this, all right, and then your next square that to the right side, you would sew again, meeting, and this is where that and what you're looking at for that 1/8 of an inch is not this big piece here, but right here is about it's about an 1/8 of an inch sticking up, and you're going to match that up because that's what's going to be above that. You're going to match up this, and then you're going to be coming down and matching that corner where that 1/4 inch seam crosses both of those, and sew it in, and it's going to lay at an angle, as you can see that. Normally these are triangles that go into a Lemoyne star, but these are squares, and they have those points out of there, which we're going to deal with when we put the border on. But right now, you'll do it exactly like we did before at the center point. And what I find is that center lace flat comes out each time when I sew through and take out those 2 stitches, and I get that that center the way that I want it to, and these are all still matching up and looking fine with that. And so there's been a few little adjustments that I've had to make, and some of my seams have not completely been a 1/4 inch, but because they've matched and they're all over an 1/8 of an inch, they fit in there and they work. And that's how I pretty much, correct when I do something. So I'm going to go to the questions. Marilyn, if you knew how nervous I get to go on camera and make sure that, everything is going to come out right. And when it doesn't, it's taken me a while, but I finally just try to let it go. And hopefully you guys have been there and know what it's all about. Australia. Well, hi, Teresa. Welcome. I found using the wood clipper after pressing my seams lay a lot flatter. You know what, Arda, and anyone else that's on that didn't make a comment, if you find something that really works for you in terms of making, your end result the way you want it to, use it. I have used it from time to time, but honestly, I keep forgetting that I have it here, and I could use that, the wood clipper, and, work on that with pressing my seams, and they do lay flat. The other thing that I, highly recommend is the acorn pressing solution. Once I had, these blocks, the center here and stuff, I just did with the, the little pen, one little dot right there, and all of a sudden, everything just laid so much flatter in that. And I'm thinking that when you get to that center star, if it's not laying flat, but if you're moving through this as carefully as we have, and you're taking your time with it, hopefully that center will be fine. And use the clipper, along with the clipper, use this acorn precision piecing liquid stuff. I found that it just, when I'm having an issue somewhere, it just works wonderfully. So for this next week, I still have a couple of these blocks to finish, and then I'm going to cut my border. I will show you that next week, how to cut the border and put those border pieces in, because they're trapezoids. And again, I show you, how that can all fit into those corners to put that on. And that'll be in 2 weeks. So this will take, a few minutes of time, and it depends on how many of these that you have done. I've got a little over half of them done. I think I've got 3 more of these blocks to make. And then I will sew this all, try to get this together. So you have 2 weeks to accomplish that. I think, this has moved along pretty well. There was a lot of little piecing put into this, but it's exciting. This is going to be a beautiful quilt. And those ladies in the quilt shop store did a beautiful job of picking out fabrics. And it's going to be stunning when it's done. And I hope that many of you will put it up and send pictures and show us, because I'm curious how a lot of you are going to quilt this quilt and make it work. So let me double check and make sure of any questions that you might still have. Oh, I've been saying clipper too, Arda, but it is a clapper. That's funny. And, thank you, Kathy, for your kind words. I do appreciate that. Yeah, it was just it was a voice typo, because she wrote clipper. I just kept saying clipper, and I know it's a clapper. So, anyway, I hope that you're doing well with all of it, and send pictures, ask questions. My, email address is right on there. And you can always go back and watch the recording again, read through her pattern, because what she says and her points and the measurements and everything are right on the money. And whether you did it the way she suggests in there without pressing and sewing the complete star together, it works. The biggest difference for me is sewing through that instead of stopping at the 1/4 inch and leaving that bulk there. That always made a mess for me, especially if I didn't hit it exactly, where when I sew through and take out those stitches, I find that I'll get a flatter and a better end result. So for those of us here in the United States, we're celebrating Thanksgiving this next week. And so happy Thanksgiving to all of you that will be celebrating that with us. And then there will be no class next week. And then we are going to meet again the week after our Thanksgiving. So hopefully it'll give you a little bit of time for some catch up on, getting all this together. It certainly will help me get the rest of what I need to get done completed. So thank you all, and just have a wonderful time with family and friends with your Thanksgiving celebrations. And wood clapper. So not clipper, wood clapper. All right. Blessings.